What really happened between John Denver and the woman he called his inspiration? Annie Denver was the muse behind Annie's song, the gentle voice in the lyrics that promised forever. But offstage, their marriage did not end in poetry. It ended in silence, in bitterness, and in a story so shocking it involved a chainsaw splitting their bed in two. Now, at 78, Annie Denver has finally confirmed the rumor that fans have whispered about for decades. Why did a love that sounded so pure unravel so completely? And what truth has she carried all these years? Let's delve in. Annie Martell was born on September 6, 1946, in Minnesota, to Jim and Norma Martell. She grew up alongside her three siblings, Linda, Terry, and Ben, in a Christian household rooted in small-town values. She attended local schools before enrolling at Augustana College in St. Peter, Minnesota. It was there, during her sophomore year, that her life unexpectedly intertwined with a rising young musician named John Denver. In 1966, Denver was performing as part of the Chad Mitchell Trio when their paths first crossed. Annie later recalled that after his formal performance, he picked up his guitar again to join a group putting on what she once described as a silly little musical. She wasn't in the spotlight that night. She was simply the student carrying stage signs for Act 1 and Act 2. Yet John noticed her. Decades later, Annie shared on the Mobituaries with Mo Rocca podcast that he even remembered exactly what she wore that evening: blue jeans, a flannel shirt, and penny loafers. What began as a simple campus encounter quickly turned into letters, late conversations, and a whirlwind romance. Their courtship moved fast. After only 9 months of dating, they were engaged, and on June 9, 1967, they were married. It was the beginning of a partnership that would later be immortalized in song. As John Denver's career soared, Annie became known to the world through Annie's Song, one of his most enduring hits. The ballad captured everything that defined him at the time: his devotion to music, his deep love for his wife, and his almost spiritual connection to nature. Over the years, Annie has spoken gently but honestly about what that song still means to her. Now, 78, she has admitted that hearing Annie's Song can still bring her to tears. Another favorite of hers is Perhaps Love, the duet John recorded with Placido Domingo, a song she has described as equally moving in a different way. While many fans assume Annie's Song was simply a spontaneous declaration of love, it was actually born during a pivotal period in John's life and career. In 1971, as he released Take Me Home Country Roads and began defining his place in music history, he was also experiencing personal moments that shaped the emotion behind the lyrics. During the early years of their marriage, Annie and John often escaped to the mountains of Aspen, Colorado, camping with friends and immersing themselves in the landscape John would later describe as spiritual. It didn't take long for him to fall in love with Aspen's vast skies and rugged peaks. The setting inspired not only Rocky Mountain High, but also became the place they chose to call home. Eventually, they built a house there and began raising their family surrounded by nature. One afternoon in 1973, after one of their many disagreements, something unexpected happened. According to Annie, they had argued, as couples do, but then made peace. John, in a lighter mood, left to go skiing. While riding the Ajax chairlift on Aspen Mountain, watching the snow and the endless horizon, a melody came to him almost fully formed. When he returned home, he sat down and wrote what would become Annie's Song. Annie later said it took him less than 10 minutes to complete. What began as a simple expression of love for her evolved, in John's eyes, into something almost sacred, a song that felt like a prayer. For Annie, it remains tangible proof that, whatever happened later, their love at that time was real. Although they were unable to have biological children, they built a family through adoption, welcoming a son, Zachary John, and a daughter, Anna Kate. Both children were deeply loved, and parenthood became one of the most meaningful chapters of their shared life. But as John's career continued to soar, cracks began to form beneath the surface. By 1982, after 15 years of marriage, they filed for divorce. John later reflected that his relentless schedule and devotion to his work had taken a toll. At the height of his fame, he was constantly traveling, performing, and promoting. In a 1983 appearance on The Russell Hardy Show, he admitted that his success and commitment to his career had affected their relationship, and that in their final years together, they had slowly drifted apart. Annie saw it differently. In her view, they had simply been too young and unprepared for the sudden intensity of stardom. John's rapid rise left her feeling unmoored, as if she no longer knew who she was outside of being John Denver's wife. The fame that fueled his career quietly eroded her sense of identity. Yet despite the pain and the distance that grew between them, their separation was not marked by public scandal. Annie Martell chose a different path after her divorce from John Denver. While he would go on to remarry, Annie never did. Over the years, quiet rumors have surfaced online claiming that she had passed away, but those reports are simply untrue. She continues to live a private life in Colorado, surrounded by her children and grandchildren. Despite the pain that inevitably comes with the end of a marriage, Annie has remained gracious when speaking about her former husband. Their relationship may not have lasted forever, but their separation was notably respectful, something rarely seen when fame and heartbreak collide. To understand their story fully, it's impossible not to look at John Denver himself. He was born Henry John Deutschendorf Jr. on December 31, 1943, in Roswell, New Mexico. The world would later know him as John Denver, one of the most recognizable voices in country and folk music. He was the son of Emma Louise and Captain Henry John Dutch Deutschendorf Sr., a highly decorated Air Force pilot. His father's military career meant constant relocation, and young Henry grew up moving from place to place. Denver later described his father as disciplined and emotionally reserved, a strict presence who wasn't openly affectionate. The frequent moves shaped him deeply. Naturally introverted, he struggled to form lasting friendships, often having to start over in new schools and unfamiliar cities. The longest stretch of stability came when his father was stationed in Tucson, Arizona, where the family lived from 1951 to 1959. Even then, Denver remained somewhat shy and inward-looking, finding comfort in solitude rather than social circles. Everything changed when he was 11 years old. His grandmother gave him an acoustic guitar, a simple gift that would quietly alter the course of his life. He taught himself to play, spending hours practicing alone. By the time he reached college, he had developed enough skill to perform in local clubs and small gigs. At that point, he was still using his birth name. It wasn't until Randy Sparks, founder of the New Christie Minstrels, suggested he adopt something shorter and easier to remember that John Denver was born, a name inspired by the state he loved. Even while studying architecture at Texas Tech University in Lubbock, he continued performing, gradually shifting his focus from drafting tables to stages. In the early 1960s, John Denver was not just playing guitar, he was fully immersed in the folk music scene. While attending college, he performed with a local folk group, but his passion for music quickly outweighed his interest in architecture. In 1963, he made a bold decision. He dropped out of school and moved to Los Angeles to pursue music full-time. It was a gamble, but one he felt compelled to take. In Los Angeles, Denver played regularly in small folk clubs, slowly building experience and confidence. 2 years later, opportunity arrived when he was chosen to replace Chad Mitchell in the Chad Mitchell Trio. With the new lineup, John Denver, David Boise, and Michael Johnson, the group was briefly renamed Denver, Boise, and Johnson. The experience gave him national exposure, but it also clarified something important. He wanted to stand on his own. A few years later, he left the group to launch a solo career. In 1969, he released his debut solo album, Rhymes and Reasons, under RCA Records. But even before that record deal, Denver had been quietly promoting himself. He had self-produced recordings of his songs, including one titled, Babe, I Hate to Go. That song caught the attention of producer Milt Okun, who helped rework it into what the world would come to know as Leaving on a Jet Plane. Okun soon became Denver's producer, and when the folk trio Peter, Paul, and Mary recorded the song, it soared to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. Denver's own version also climbed to the top of the U.S. Cashbox chart in December 1969, cementing his reputation as a gifted songwriter. What many fans never realized was how much work he put in behind the scenes. Denver handled much of his early promotion himself. He toured the Midwest tirelessly, sometimes offering to perform for free just to reach new audiences. He visited radio stations, introduced himself as the writer of Leaving on a Jet Plane, and occasionally convinced hosts to let him play a song live on air. Those grassroots efforts built a loyal fan base that would stay with him for decades. While Rhymes and Reasons introduced him to the industry, it was his 1971 album, Poems, Prayers, and Promises, that changed everything. The record became a commercial breakthrough, propelled by the now iconic Take Me Home, Country Roads. By then, he had also partnered with manager Jerry Weintraub, whose aggressive radio airplay campaign expanded Denver's reach nationwide. By the early 1970s, John Denver was no longer just a promising folk singer. He was a full-fledged star. A string of hits cemented his place at the top of the charts, including Rocky Mountain High, Sunshine on My Shoulders, Thank God I'm a Country Boy, and of course, Annie's Song. Under the guidance of his manager, Jerry Weintraub, Denver's visibility expanded beyond radio. He appeared on countless local and national television programs, first as a guest and eventually as a host. His 1975 television special Rocky Mountain Christmas became a cultural phenomenon, drawing more than 60 million viewers and earning the distinction of being one of ABC's highest-rated broadcasts at the time. Demand for him grew internationally as well. He went on to host The John Denver Show for the BBC, further solidifying his global appeal. Along the way, he collected multiple Grammy Awards and American Music Awards, reinforcing his status as one of the defining voices of the decade. As the late 1970s approached and musical trends began to shift, Denver's commercial dominance gradually softened. Rather than fight the change, he redirected his energy toward causes that had always mattered to him: humanitarian work and environmental conservation. He performed at fundraising events for organizations such as the Aspen Camp School for the Deaf and contributed generously to the Aspen Valley Hospital's capital campaign. In Aspen, Colorado, he developed the 450-acre WindStar Land Conservancy, which served not only as his residence, but also as a wildlife sanctuary and educational center focused on environmental awareness. While his public image often reflected peace and harmony, his personal life was more complicated. His 15-year marriage to Annie Martell ended in divorce, and the separation reportedly carried moments of intense emotion. In later interviews, Denver admitted that in a moment of anger during the division of their assets, he attempted to cut their marital bed in half with a chainsaw, a dramatic symbol of the finality he felt. Those close to the situation suggested the act was fueled by hurt and retaliation after Annie had cut down several trees on their Aspen property, which held deep meaning for him. Several years later, in 1985, Denver met Australian actress Cassandra Delaney while in Sydney. Their relationship moved quickly, and they married in 1988. The following year, they welcomed a daughter, Jessie Bell, and Delaney moved into Denver's home in Aspen. But the marriage, like his first, proved turbulent. By 1991, they had separated. Delaney later described him in harsh terms, calling him a vindictive bully, signaling that the relationship had unraveled painfully. Many who followed John Denver's life believe that his second divorce marked a turning point. While no single event can fully explain what followed, the end of his marriage to Cassandra Delaney seemed to coincide with a period of personal decline. In 1992, he was charged with drunk driving for the first time. The following year, he pleaded guilty to another DUI after crashing his Porsche into a tree, an incident that resulted in probation. After his conviction, the Federal Aviation Administration ordered him to abstain from alcohol if he wished to continue flying, one of his greatest passions. But compliance proved difficult. By the next year, he was medically disqualified from operating aircraft. Behind his gentle, nature-loving public image, Denver was struggling. He battled depression, admitted to insecurities, and acknowledged using substances such as LSD and marijuana in earlier years, even revealing that Rocky Mountain High was written during a period when he was experimenting. Critics sometimes labeled him a bad drunk, accusing him of hypocrisy, especially given his wholesome persona. Flying had always been deeply personal for him. Though he never followed in his father's footsteps as a decorated military pilot, he earned his own pilot's license and took pride in mastering the skies. He participated in aviation-related promotions and spoke openly about the freedom he felt in the air. It was a freedom he cherished, and one that would ultimately define his final moments. On October 12, 1997, John Denver was piloting a Rutan Long EZ, a lightweight, home-built experimental aircraft, when it crashed into Monterey Bay near Pacific Grove, California. He was 53 years old. The accident immediately sparked speculation and conspiracy theories. One widely discussed issue involved the aircraft's fuel selector valve, which was positioned behind the pilot's left shoulder. The awkward placement required the pilot to twist around and potentially release control of the aircraft in order to switch fuel tanks, a dangerous maneuver in flight. There were also concerns about the fuel gauges. Reports indicated that the gauges were difficult to read and lacked clear markings, making it challenging to determine exactly how much fuel remained. Investigators ultimately concluded that the crash was likely the result of pilot error while attempting to switch fuel tanks, combined with the aircraft's design limitations. While the plane's ergonomics may have contributed, there was no evidence of sabotage. In the end, Denver paid the ultimate price. Yet his legacy did not end in the waters of Monterey Bay. He remains remembered not only for his music, but also for his humanitarian and environmental efforts. Decades after his death, his songs continue to resonate. Take Me Home, Country Roads still reappears on the Billboard charts, recently gaining renewed attention after being featured in a Super Bowl commercial. Tribute productions and stage adaptations celebrating his life continue to draw audiences, proving that while his ending was tragic, his voice and the feelings it carried remain timeless.